Hey everybody, John M. here. I just wanted to give you a quick introduction before this episode takes off. This episode is entitled Dawn C. Psycho Girlfriend Turns AA Fanatic. And this is a bit of I guess what you would call a special edition. I also call it Blast from the Past. In other words, this episode was released already. Back when we first started Sober Speak. So it is actually originally aired as episode number 15. But what I've noticed is we have so many new listeners lately. And the new listeners or new subscribers, it seems like they will go 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 episodes back and listen to those. And then just kind of listen to the new ones going forward. And this was such a special episode and so near and dear to my heart. I had no idea what to expect before it was recorded, but after it was recorded, I said to myself, "Oh, this is why I do this." I mean, it was absolutely a fantastic episode. So I know you're going to enjoy it as well. Just real quick before we start, I do have one letter/email that I want to get read here. And it is from, she recently wrote in from Miss Jackie E. of Northern California. The title of the email was entitled Life Changing Podcast with an exclamation point and in all caps, and says, "You've made my day. In the future, know that I am spreading the word about your podcast. Just downloaded it for my sponsor last night." Smiley face. Thank you for your service and look forward to more episodes. Blessings, Jackie E. Well, Jackie E., blessings back at you. Thank you so much for writing in. And now we're on to the episode. Enjoy Dawn C. Psycho Girlfriend Turns AA Fanatic. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 15 of Sober Speak. And I am sitting here with my friend Dawn, D-A-W-N. She is a female, not a male, obviously. But anyway, I just want to start out by saying this episode is brought to you by Sean. Sean went to our website, soberspeak.com, clicked on the donate tab, and made a contribution. Thank you, Sean, for your generous contribution. This episode is for you. At Sober Speak here, you will find podcasts of people sharing their recovery, much like they do in an AA speaker meeting. These men and women share their experience centered around the Alcoholics Anonymous 12 Steps of Recovery. My name is John M. I'm an alcoholic, and I will be the host of this episode. Consider this, if you will, your meeting between meetings. And I have asked Dawn to bring in something that she thought was important to her to read as we began the podcast today. So, Dawn, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you read.
You bet. This is out of our 12-step promises, that life will take on new meaning, to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss.
Great, Dawn. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And that's especially important to our community here lately, and we'll dive into that a little bit. We welcome all of your comments, and you can get in touch with us at soberspeak.com or simply send your feedback to feedback@soberspeak.com. Remember, SoberSpeak is a self-supporting organization, their own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. And I'm going to ask Dawn to read this last part of this here.
Please remember, we do not speak for any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. So take what you want and leave the rest at the curb.
That's right. Leave the rest at the curb. All right, so. Well, Dawn, I'm glad to have you here. I've been looking forward to this all week. We've known each other, I would imagine for 10 years now or so? Right
Yeah, the summer will be 10 years since I first came in to the trailer.
Well, in fact, why don't we go ahead and start with that? What is your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is July 20th, 2009.
July 20th, so that'll be 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. I don't know why, our friend Kimbo, who used to say everyone makes a big deals out of the zeros and the fives for whatever reason. So this will be one of the zeros.
Actually, this summer will be my 9th year sober.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's 10 years since I came into AA and was working on that.
I got you. Completely get it. So we've known each other for a while, but, we've never... And this is the interesting part to me, is that, and why I started doing this, and that is, it's almost like you can know people for years and know bits and pieces of what they share in 3 minutes in a meeting,
right?
But you don't really know the whole story. I mean, unless you go to a speaker meeting, and I've actually never seen you speak at a speaker meeting, so this will be all fresh and new for me, which I'm glad about. Let's talk a little bit on the front end of this. Both of us... we have a friend who is dear to both of us who passed away this week, and I'm gonna go ahead and say his last name because he's not with us anymore. He's at the big meeting in the sky. His name was George Clark, and George was kind of a cornerstone for all of us here in the North Texas area.
Totally.
And did just so much service work, and he helped so many people through so many years in the program. And he was on a ladder this week doing his job. He was a construction...
Yesterday, yeah.
Yesterday, 7 in the morning, I guess, right? And he was here in a suburb right outside of Dallas, which is where we live. And he fell backwards, I guess, on the ladder. 25 feet up is what they said it was. And
stubborn as hell, not using any safety gear.
Right. Like there was a gentleman who was there with him said George was old school, right? And in this particular case, old school didn't serve him well. But so I want you to kind of give your thoughts a little bit. I know you knew George, and I want you, and from that reading that you just kind of brought up there a moment ago, why don't you kind of give an idea of how that dovetails into George and his life and how we're going to miss him, and any sort of thoughts you may have about George here before we get started.
Sure, yeah. George was definitely been a cornerstone for me since I came into the Frisco group specifically, and just was always someone that made an effort to remember everyone's name. I don't know if it was just the women, but he definitely did make an effort. I was single when I came in to the program, and he would make an effort, and it wasn't in a creepy way, right? To get to know the women and remember their names and let them know they were welcome. And, there was a friend of mine last summer a single woman who was struggling and sharing in meetings about struggling about not having a relationship with her father. And I remember seeing him show up 2 weeks later and bring her a kit for her car of jumper cables and a flashlight and stuff, and say, I just want you to know, if I was your dad, I'd make sure you had stuff like this. And just doing stuff like that for women, in recovery that might not have a man in their life to take care of them, that was always really cool. But about 3 years ago, July 3 years ago, was on his deathbed, right? Because he was suffering he had had cirrhosis of the liver and hepatitis C, which he didn't know most of his recovery. He was sober 31 years. Most of his recovery he didn't know that he had because he didn't believe in going to the doctor.
Right.
And so when his health became really poor and realized he had that, it was too late to really do any treatment. And what was going to be the last few weeks of his life, we all were around his bed every other night bringing meetings to him, and he could not stand to be seen as weak. Like, he hated the fact that he couldn't get out of bed and that people were seeing him look this weak. And then, his last few days as they moved him to the hospital, the doctor said, I've never seen anyone with this many visitors, with this many people that love him. And he ended up moving him to the top of the donor list because of that.
Oh, wow.
Just amazing how many people he touched, right? And to have so many hundreds of people there every day. And what are the chances of being moved to the top of the donor list? And then what are the chances of a liver transplant being successful. Like, it's not super common that your body accepts another organ, and was completely recovered, right? And then, I don't know the exact time frame, a year or so later, his house burns to the ground. He's asleep in it. A neighbor / angel comes to the door and wakes him up before he goes down in flames. Like, he's had so many near-death experiences in the past 3 years in ways that he wouldn't have liked. And I really like how someone put it yesterday that he's probably up there laughing right now. I got to die on a ladder doing manly things, right? Going out his own way. So...
Right. And I'll be brief with this, but my favorite George story is I was over at the church where he started the Shivering Denizens here in the area, and I was there helping to get another recovery group jump started at the time, and I saw him. And he knew I was uncomfortable about it. And I talked to him about it just briefly. And he came and he put his arms around me. And he says, "Do you mind if I pray for you, John?" And I said, "No, George, not at all." And we just kind of stood there on the balcony outside. He said a prayer for me. And it just kind of soothed everything inside me. And it just kind of calmed my soul. And I'll always remember George for that, and he's just a good man. So, anyway, well, I just wanted to make sure that we kind of paid homage, or just at least mentioned that, because it's been such a big deal in this particular community. God bless you, my friend George, wherever you are. Like they said in the meeting yesterday, sure he's up there eating pie because he loved pie, and I will look forward to seeing you at the big meeting in the skies someday. So, all right, so let's turn a corner here, Dawn, and talk a little bit about you, and so, like I said, I've known you for years, but I don't know a lot about your story. Mm-hmm. And so tell me where you came from, where you grew up. I mean, just in brief, kind of a thumbnail sketch, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I was born in a real Italian family in Massachusetts, but when I was 7, we moved to Fort Worth with my dad's job transfer. And just strong Italian roots, and I'm the oldest of 3 girls and grew up in Tarrant County, and we didn't come on this side of 360, right? Those are the Dallas people. And ended up coming and moving to Frisco, McKinney area, because I started dating a guy that was in recovery, ironically enough.
So this was after high school or whatever?
Yeah, this actually was in 2008.
Yeah, okay.
So, but yeah, growing up, just had a really normal, lovely childhood, you know. Family was real involved in the church, and my mom headed the Right to Life group for Tarrant County, and just everything was infused in the Catholic Church, and I went to Catholic high school, and once I was like the straight A student, always trying to grade papers for the teachers, and just always wanted to be the best and the good kid until I hit about 15, and I just started not feeling comfortable with myself, and I don't know if it's the first time I drank, but the first time I remember. Mm-hmm.
Did the parents or the siblings drink much? Was everybody kind of...
There was always a lot of alcohol around. Those of you who've been raised in a Catholic environment might relate. Like, my parents had all the priests over all the time at the kitchen table, and they drank all night. That's what they did. And I remember serving wine as a 13-year-old at the church events to everybody all night. But my mother didn't start drinking alcoholically till I was 27. So that was when I was an adult that her alcoholism turned. Okay. I do remember that they would go out and drink once or twice a month, and he always carried her home because she was passed out. Okay. So she could never control her drinking. But it's not like I grew up...
So you said your mother started drinking alcoholic when you were 20... When you were
27, her alcoholism took a turn for the worse.
Really?
She still, drinks alcoholically.
Okay.
And there's alcoholism all throughout my family. I know now. My grandfather died of alcoholism. His mother died of alcoholism. It's on both sides.
And just to kind of back up there, like most people that I meet in the program, right, started early, and then not all, but most, right? So I'm wondering, like, when your mom started drinking at 27 alcoholically, was there something that precipitated that?
So she always exhibited the allergy, but it wasn't like a daily thing or something that was causing major problems.
Gotcha.
But it escalated throughout my 20s, and they got divorced when I was 27. So that's when I remember it kind of going off the rails, because
Gotcha.
once they got divorced,
Yeah.
you don't answer the phone after 5 because you know she's drunk. She's not going to remember what you talk about, that type thing.
Right.
You know?
Do you remember how that divorce affected you and how you felt about it at the time?
I was pretty self-consumed at the time.
Yeah.
I was out of the house. I got married the first time at 27, and
A lot of things happened at 27 there.
yeah.
So you got married right when your parents were getting divorced.
You're right. Yeah, I never put that together, but yeah, actually.
And so, well, tell me about that marriage. So how did,
My first husband.
that's not the guy who you were dating in recovery that came over, right?
But they have the same name.
Oh, they do?
They're both
Okay.
Eric, yeah. So my first husband, we dated for 5 years. It was a horrible relationship. Like nothing but intense fighting, break up, get back together. I was full-blown psychotic. Like, oh, I found out you're sleeping with a girl at work. I call and have his electricity turned off. I go cut off all the arms to his shirts. I make flyers to hang up at all the grocery stores saying this guy cheats with his face on. Like, I was like not, someone I would have wanted to date. Pretty crazy. And so we had a really crazy relationship.
How do you... just back up there where I've never seen... Now, that's one I've never seen. The
Psycho.
Right. So
Full-on psychotic.
You created posters to hang up at the...
Flyers with his pictures on it saying this, don't ever date this guy, he's a liar, cheater. And then at the time...
And where would you
before
post,
phones,
like...
When you used to walk into grocery stores, there was a big thumbtack board, right? Or at coffee shops. So I would go put them when you enter grocery stores and coffee shops all over the town we lived in, which was Bedford at the time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, good stuff. Good times. It was crazy. Like,
that's why I love Sober Speak, because I like vulnerability.
I would follow him, borrow a car from a friend, swap cars, wear a baseball cap, and sit there and watch him to see how he's interacting with women. Do I think the way he hugged her, something's going on? Crazy, 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 crazy.
Okay.
I was psycho my whole every relationship I was in until I got sober.
Okay, so...
For sure.
And just kind of back up a little bit. But that's why
I'm glad you're amused, because I'm kind of disgusted.
That's why I love Sober Speak, because see, like, I sit in meetings with you all the time, but I would have no idea that you had this piece of your life, because we don't go there. It's just, I don't know. And
I don't see how that would help the newcomer.
I completely get it. Okay, so...
Since we had such a terrible relationship after 5 years, we started going to church together, but he was singing at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, which is this huge mega church.
Yeah.
And when the pastor found out that everyone knows who you are if you sing there in the community, because it's so big, right? So it's like you're a little star.
Yeah.
So when they found out we were living together, they said, you either need to get married or not live together anymore, because that is totally against the church's morals, even though he wasn't on staff or anything, just volunteer.
Right.
So we got married. Right? So,
okay. And this is how old again? 27? Is that the same?
27 years old. And this guy didn't drink like me at all. He would have one Guinness and nurse it the whole night. And we were always fighting about... I want to party. Why don't you want to party? Or I'd have neighbors over want to stay up all night, and he'd go to bed and I'd not, and it was crazy. So
the church was concerned about you living together, but not necessarily about your partying efforts, so to speak.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So there you're 27, you get married. So when you said that's my first husband, I'm assuming that did not last very long. How long did that last?
Unfortunately, 4 months into the relationship, I decided I was in love with my next door neighbor, because he drank with me all night. And he was going through a divorce. I was nursing him through his divorce. And my husband went to bed at 9. Boring, So... I decided I was in love. So after 6 months of being married and, almost 6 years of being together, I said, I'm leaving. I'm in love with someone else. and I left. And then after a few months...
But that was the neighbor. So, like, would you have to come back into the neighbor? I'm just curious.
We were living in an apartment at the time, but yeah, he was next door.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, awkward, slightly, yeah. So I was raised with good Catholic guilt. I couldn't deal with the guilt of, you get married forever.
Yeah.
And so I went back and said, okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to commit to this marriage. Okay. And he was like, awesome. And then a few months later, I'm like, oh, I'm just really not into it. So I went back to the guy.
The neighbor.
And I did this 6 times over the course of 3 years, which was incredibly, it ripped apart so many relationships, not just with each guy. My parents, like one of the times I broke up with my husband, he moved in with my parents because they couldn't believe my behavior. So they took him in. And with his parents, the damage I did to my kids, to the neighbors' kids who I'd become close with. I mean, it was just nasty ripple effect.
Yeah. My goodness. Okay, so when did that end up ending?
When I was 30, whatever year that was.
So about 3 years.
Yeah.
So that was all going on there 6, 8 months, 10, 12 months. So it looks like y'all just tried it for several times over that 3 years, and then it just ended up going kaput eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, so now...
So when I got divorced at 30, and I'm single for the first time in my life, because I'd always had the next relationship before the last one ended.
Yeah.
Because I don't like to be alone.
Right.
That's when at 30, I'd always drank alcoholically. I clearly remember. I just didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
Like, I was at Stephen F. Austin for my first semester of college, and I was assigned a roommate I didn't know. And where they just assign one.
Right.
And I remember going to her when we first moved in and saying, hey, I'm going to keep beer in the fridge in the closet. I know we're not allowed to have alcohol in our rooms. Let me know if this isn't cool. And she was like, all right. And then when she turned me in 2 weeks later, I was livid. Why would she do that? Like, I gave her I was so mad. But I always had
to... She turned you in, like, to the RA or something like that?
Yeah, I got in trouble. And she was gone that day. Like, but I got a room to myself, so I thought it was kind of cool, actually. But I would have to drink a lot by myself before I went to go out. You know, friends were going out to go to happy hour and to go party, and I was drinking by myself 4 or 5 beers to go out, you know, just to feel comfortable to do that. And it was nasty when I was 19, as far as that's when blackout drinking really started, with waking up and really not knowing where I was. Because that's when I started really playing with shots and Goldschlager and all sorts of other stuff. Yeah. But I just told myself Goldschlager's the problem.
You're right.
Or liquor's the problem. I've got to stay to beer and wine. Right. But then, you know, I just thought I liked being drunk way more than most people. I love to party.
Yeah.
And that first time that I remember drinking at 15, I remember sitting in someone's house, their parents were out of town, and drinking a 2-liter bottle of Purple Passion. And I spent all night vomiting on the toilet. It's in my hair. Gross. Don't remember half the night.
Purple Passion, help me with that.
It tastes like Kool-Aid. Yeah. But it's Everclear and
gotcha. So it's a mixture of, okay.
They sell it in 2-liter bottles.
Oh, do they? Oh, okay.
They did. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But it's a night of not remembering and vomiting and grossness. And the next day, remember thinking, that was so awesome. I can't wait to do it again. Right. Like, loved the feeling of being out of control and whatever. Right. So that continued through my 20s of a lot of partying heavily and a lot of fighting with the people around me at how much I was partying.
They just don't understand, do they?
I know. The first time I got arrested, I call it for suspicion of DWI because I was found not guilty. Even though I blew over the legal limit. I was 23. But I was able to not get that charge on my record. And then in my late 20s, my dad sat me down and said, you know, you're turning into your mom, which is the worst thing you could tell me at the time, you know, in relation to my drinking. And, you know, you've got to start controlling your drinking. And I was like, get off my back. I'm a grown-ass adult, you know. And I get divorced at 30, and now I'm by myself, and it's full on. The next 3 years were really bad. My sister lived with me for a while, and I would start drinking as soon as I got home. I mean, I'd usually start like 4, 5, 6. It depended what time I started client happy hours. I'm in IT sales, so I was able to always schedule happy hours every day with clients or vendors or coworkers, or it just was very convenient that it was a write-off. Building relationships. And so, but I'd always drink till 11 or so, 12 at home, just, a few bottles of wine. I became a real wino. But then I'd in a blackout feel the need at midnight to run to Whataburger or Taco Bell.
Oh, no.
And I didn't ever remember that I did this until I got in my car the next morning to go to work, and there's food wrappers in the car. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. But my sister sat me down once really, really worried about my drinking because she said, I heard the garage door open at 2 a.m. when you left, and I ran down to try to stop you because I knew that you had drank a ton all night and you should not be behind the wheel. She said, half an hour, whatever later, I hear you pull back in and the garage door closed, and she was in bed upstairs thinking, oh, thank goodness she made it back, right? Mm-hmm. She goes, but I never heard you walk up the stairs. So I come down to check on you, and I had passed out in my car with the car running and the garage door closed. Just pulled in and passed out right there. And she's like, if I hadn't come down and heard that, you'd be dead right now. And I'm like, get off my ass. Right. Like, leave me alone. Right. Quit judging. It didn't happen, right?
Quit judging. Right.
So I had a lot of people talking to me about my drinking for a while, but I did not see any problem. Yeah. I just thought I liked being drunk more than most people.
You just had an affinity for it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I guess take us into recovery. How did you discover recovery?
My oldest son was on a select soccer team, and his best friend on that team.
And just like to back up, so when did the sons come into?
Yeah. So that first semester in college I mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pregnant within 3 months.
Gotcha. And with Stephen F. Austin?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Gotcha. Moved back home over Christmas break when I found out I was pregnant. And so I dated one guy throughout high school. And when we went to college, decided we'd just hook up when we were drunk. Right. So we weren't in a relationship at all. So I'd always wanted kids. And my dad agreed to be my Lamaze partner. My parents said, you can move back home and we'll support you. This will be great. And they were just so excited that I wasn't going to terminate the pregnancy. So I had a kid. Yeah. And then got a different boyfriend quickly thereafter. And then...
Were you drinking during the pregnancy? Do you remember?
I didn't during my pregnancy. I think I smoked pot once. But... Right. And then shortly thereafter having a baby, found myself pregnant again with a different boyfriend. Right. So now life was getting really difficult. I was going to give up this child for adoption, and then circumstances changed and ended up keeping him. But anyway, so I have 2 sons that are 16 months apart. Yeah. And so. Right. Okay. So my son's best friend, he was 12 or so. Right. His parents were both sober. And we were always at their house every single Wednesday night in McKinney when the boys hung out and we went to practice together. And this couple always had alcoholics in and out of their doors, either living with them or crashing on their couch or meeting for step work. Always, even when they knew we were going to be there. Just it was a revolving door of alcoholics and people in recovery. And she sat me down one day and read to me out of the book and said, "Can you relate to this?" And I was like, "Negative. No, I don't know what you're talking about."
Do you remember what she read by any chance?
It was about the actor. Yeah. Yeah, the story about the actor. And she came out of her closet one day. She's like, "I got to show you something." And she brought out a 2nd edition big book. She's like, "If you promise to read this, I want to give this to you." And she was holding it like you would have held the original Bible. Right? Ever written. Right. And I was like, I don't know why that's that important to you, but I don't want any book that's that important so I'm going to pass, And now I really wish I could have that 2nd edition big book. That would be so amazing. So anyway, one of their friends rolled in one day from a group in McKinney, and we just kind of hit it off and started talking, and he asked me out and we started dating, and he's like, "By the way, I'm sober. I'm in recovery." He'd only been sober 4 months at the time. He'd been going in and out for a while. And I thought, it's kind of boring, but designated driver at all times would be super cool. So I decided to go out with him. And at first, like the first few times we went out, I didn't drink the whole date. Yeah. Like the first time, I'll never forget getting dropped off at my house going, oh my gosh, I didn't accidentally have sex with him. I didn't like accidentally say all this stuff I didn't want. You know what I mean? Like we just had like a normal dinner and I'm getting dropped off and I remember everything that was talked about and that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So then I went home and drank and by myself. And so I did that for a few weeks of not drinking when I went out with him and then drinking when I got home.
Yeah.
But then, we started hanging out a lot. So he would go to AA meetings every single night at 7:30. So I would go hang out at his place while he was at a meeting and drink a bottle of wine, and I'd be there when he got home. And I just put the bottle at the bottom of the trash can, because then he won't notice, that I just drank a bottle in an hour. And before too long, he was drinking with me. So it got real ugly real quick, both of us drinking together.
Yeah.
But I had gone to a few meetings with him here and there, and one of our huge blow-ups, I went to counseling the next day, and my counselor I've had for a decade said, would you consider going to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting tonight? And I was like, why? Because I'm thinking, I've never told her how I drink. Why would she suggest that? And she said, I think you're an alcoholic. And so I went that night, and I stayed for the meeting after. I went to 2 meetings that night, and that's how I ended up starting to come to AA.
So did you stay the first time you went in? Have you gone back out since?
Yeah, so I was at a group in Grapevine for the first month.
Okay.
And then I moved out here, and I've been at Frisco Group since, so that was in June of 2008.
Okay.
Since August 2008 or so.
Wow. Okay, so let's go into recovery then. So I know you do a lot around the program, right? And the reason I want you to talk about it is because I believe it's important and I believe it's good for people to know and I want them to know. Here's what I'm interested in really, right? There's going to be people listening to this who say, what's important? How do I stay sober? What are the pillars, if you will, of staying sober in Alcoholics Anonymous? So can you share about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I love this program and meeting steps and service. It's the secret sauce. When we look at the circle and the triangle, as far as...
So let's make sure we slow down there. You just said, so I mean, there's some people who are familiar with this, some people are not, but you just said meeting, steps, and service,
Correct.
Right? Being the secret sauce. You put them all together and they make for something magical. All right, so anyway, I just want to make
sure. So we have these 3 sides of the triangle, and one side is working the steps. We go through the steps, and that's where we find recovery as an alcoholic, right? And the other side is unity. And the way I find unity with other alcoholics and realize I'm not doing this alone is by going to meetings. And then the other side is service. And so there's something magic happens when I do all 3, because when I share my experience with another alcoholic and help them and stop thinking about myself all the time, I was told that the circle around the triangle represents feeling whole, this 4th dimension of existence. And it is really indescribable when you hit that 4th dimension of existence of how life feels to me when I'm working the steps every day, going to meetings at least every other day, and working with others and being of service. That is unbelievable inside as to a wholeness I feel that I never knew that's what I was seeking.
Very well put. Let's talk about that 4th. So there, and I know where you're getting the term, right? The 4th dimension of existence that comes from our big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. If there's somebody out there who has maybe not heard that term before, they may think, wow, I was listening to that Dawn lady and then she just went right off the rails talking about the 4th dimension of existence. And so if you can, and I know you just said it's indescribable, and I'm about to ask you to describe it.
Right.
Talk then a little bit about what you mean by the 4th dimension of existence. And let me just throw a little of my own experience here on the front end, because I remember when I read for the first time in the book, it talked about developing this vital 6th sense. And I thought, what are they talking about? The vital sixth sense, right? This is kind of, is this wacky stuff? Is this far out stuff? Are they trying to get me to be some sort of cult or whatever the case may be? So talk about your experience with things like the fourth dimension of existence, the vital sixth sense, and what that means to you from your perspective.
So when you talk about the vital sixth sense, to me, that's all about being connected with my intuition. Like, when I always believed in God. I was raised heavily in the church. Mm-hmm. We were in the choir. We went to Catholic school. You know, we were heavy in the church, but actually getting connected and being able to have a conscious relationship with God and being able to, I believe now that God isn't up there in the sky. God's inside of me and God's inside of you, and getting to hear God speak to me through other people, as well as through meditation, as well as through music, as well as through nature, right? Like all these different ways. If I take time every single day to connect to God when I wake up, then I understand when my intuition's leading me somewhere or guiding me to make a decision, versus me like, I don't know, is that in my head? Is that what I'm supposed to do? You know, like I have a intuition connection because that's God in my gut now.
So people can kind of put some, how do I put this? How does this manifest itself? When you talk about actually taking time to connect with God, and then you go through a decision-making process, can you give us some real-life examples of how that has become manifest in your life and your relationship with God?
Sure. So steps 10, 11, and 12 are an integral part of my every single day.
And for those who are not familiar with 10, 11, or 12, so step 10 is continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. And then 12 is, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
There's a lot of meat in all
right.
those.
You could stop just about, I mean, you're going to have an entire hour after just half of one of those steps right there, right? But when you, so that's what I want the listeners to know, right? There are 10, 11, and 12. It's what we call the maintenance steps within Alcoholics Anonymous. And so when Dawn is talking there, she's saying, I practice 10, 11, and 12 every day. And that's where the growth comes, right? And so when you talk about that, so go ahead and explain a little bit about that, how you practice that in your life.
So in 10, paying attention all day to every time I get irritated. It happens a lot. Yeah. Like, I don't understand when people have a hard time coming up with stuff to write about every day, because people irritate me all the time. Like, and taking note of those on my phone, on my notepad, so that when I sit down to write and do my nightly inventory, I can remember like how things piss me off or irritate me, or I'm being selfish and I know it. But I also think it's important where it says in the 12 and 12 that we have like a ledger. Because it really only focuses in the big book on looking at where I'm selfish, self-seeking, resentful, and afraid. But in the 12 and 12, it talks about looking at the good and the bad, not beating ourselves up. So the journal I use, there's a column for the good stuff. Did I go to a meeting today? Did I call another alcoholic today? Did I do something kind and loving for my family that was out of the ordinary, stuff like that? Yeah. And then really writing down, where was I selfish? Where was I self-seeking? Where was I afraid? And then...
and dishonest. And for those who, once again, who are listening, who are wondering, where does that come from? It's all throughout Alcoholics Anonymous. It's all throughout the big book, right? Where are we selfish, dishonest, resentful, and afraid? And it's just like a mantra that we're constantly repeating to ourselves. Look at myself. And one thing I just want to input here real quick is that I noticed that last night I was actually getting into some emotional discomfort, I'll put it that way. Something had really rubbed me the wrong way. And I noticed myself processing it by saying, okay, as opposed to running away from this, right, and getting angry, let's lean into this a little. What is the universe? What is God? What is Alcoholics Anonymous? What is my intuition trying to teach me here? So let's look at where this is coming from and why it's affecting me in this way. So anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but so we have 10, 11, and 12. You're talking about 10.
I love that we're taught by going through step 4 that I have at some point in the past, if someone's bothered me, made a decision based on self that put me in a position to be hurt, right? So once I really understood that in my soul, took a year or two to go, whoa, every time someone bothers me, I've done something to put myself in a position to be hurt, whether it's my expectations I have of people to do certain things or wanting them to act a certain way or do things my way, or judging them or talking about them or whatever it is, right? So once I really get that, it's powerful when I stop and look at every single day, right? What am I doing? And go talk to people if I've harmed them.
Right.
And talk to others about the stuff that's coming up.
Right. It sets you free.
Totally.
It sets you free.
And spending time every single morning to connect with God. And I think everyone does that in their own way. I have a journal where I answer the questions that I ask in the book. What are my plans for the day? Do I have any motives that are selfish, self-seeking? But then I also, my every day starts with a gratitude list, and it's about 50 things that I'm grateful for today.
Wow, do you write out 50
Absolutely.
things every?
I love my gratitude journal.
I'm impressed with that.
I love it. I also make a list of my desires after I do that every morning and reflect on what I'm grateful for. What do I desire to come into my life? Mm-hmm. Who do I desire to be? I did not like who I was when I was drinking. I was not a faithful person. I was not an honest person. And I love today knowing that I am in a completely honest marriage. Like I tell my husband everything. You don't have to worry about who I'm talking to. I don't get some little side pleasure from flirting with someone anymore. I don't, even innocent, you know what I mean? Like seemingly innocent, whatever. Right. I just love what that does. But I love meditation. I do a lot of guided meditations.
You were talking about. I think you did that earlier this morning,
with
right?
Wayne Dyer. I spent about 40 minutes doing an I am meditation.
Right. I am. What's I am?
I am. It's.
I am.
Like it's the God, but it's saying over and over. What am I? I am kind. I am loving. I am honest. It's a powerful. It's on YouTube, but you do it along with them. It's
cool. And I have found a lot of things on YouTube as well.
Yeah, a lot.
Which I mean, you and that's the whole point of this, right? You can. The job is my job is to seek, right? And if you seek, and if you're looking for it, if you're looking for ways to pray, if you're looking for ways to meditate, if you're looking for ways to help others, if you're looking for ways to take inventory. It will be shown to you, right? But that's the thing is that in my seat, I have to make sure that I'm seeking. And so tell me a little bit about the meditation and what it does for you and how it affects you and why you like it so much.
If I start every day with meditation, even if it's only 10 minutes, I love Saturday and Sunday mornings because I get a full hour. I do writing and meditating, and both combined is usually 90 minutes. I love the weekends now that, I don't have little kids in sports or anything and not running out the door. But it's often shorter on days that I have to get to work. But I get just grounded with my higher power, and I'm so much better for the day. I'm connected with my intuition. I'm more peaceful. I'm more kind. I remember who I want to be for the day, right? Just one day at a time. And it helps me so much. And I think it's so cool that it is a God of our own understanding. I have a lot of friends that their best way to connect in the morning is with scripture and the Bible. And I have friends that do it through mantras and chanting. And mine's changed a ton. Over the past decade, and I get to keep growing and lean into what I'm drawn to. And it doesn't have to be about a religion. It doesn't have to look anything like yours. All that matters is that we're taking time upon awakening to connect with our higher power in a way that's powerful to each of us.
That's right. You mentioned something there a little bit ago about a decision-making process, and I know that as the years have gone on, how I make. Some are little decisions, but even if I have a little decision, what seems to be little to somebody else, and for whatever reason in my heart, it's causing me some sort of discomfort, distress, anxiety, basically. There are ways I have going through making a decision, right? So, So I'm thinking about people out there who may be in the midst of trying to decide about, let's just say, about a relationship that they're in, or they're trying to decide about a job that they're in and whether they should switch and whether they should stay where they are. I'm thinking about people that may be, struggling with whether to come into recovery or not, or, continue the way that they're living. Talk a little bit about how your decision-making process goes, not only for smaller decisions, but for larger decisions, and discuss that a little bit.
I used to be super I'm just going to do whatever makes me feel good right now, And now, I've been struggling career-wise for a little over a year. I don't have to go jump the gun and do what feels good at the moment. I cannot do anything right now. Until I feel like I've been given clarity in my gut, I don't do anything anymore.
There you go. Right. And, I'm just going to describe it, and like you said, clarity in my gut, right? And I know that with me, many times what happens is, and I don't want to go all spiritual here on people, and I'm not holier than thou, but when I come to a major decision, there's a point to where I get inside me to where usually it's go one way or go the other. If I can get to that point, I can kind of go inside and see that one way gives me some peace, and one way gives me some discomfort. And even though that way that gives me peace may cause discomfort going that way, I'll know that that's the way that I need to go. It's just the next right move. It doesn't mean I have it all planned out, but I have peace about going that particular way. And
for me, I visualize being in flow, like with the river. Am I in flow with things aren't supposed to be really hard, I don't believe, like every little decision. If I'm going in flow, things feel right inside. Right?
I call it going where the life is, right? And many times, though, that is something that's going to upset the apple cart. And what I mean by that is many times, there's a particular group that's going one way with particular things.
Totally.
And, it seems, well, the group's going that way. Why am I being pulled to go this way, right? Is there something wrong here? Is there something wrong with me, right? And, and I've seen this before to where you're going through a major decision and you can go to 10 people that you really trust.
Yeah.
You like their program, or you like how they are in life. You like what sort of people they are and what they've become in their life. But you can get 10 different answers from 10 different people, and then you're with like, oh wow, what do I do now? And that's where you do have to go inside.
And that's what's so cool about sponsoring people and helping people get sober, is teaching them how to just connect with their higher power to find the answer within, because I can't tell you if you're supposed to stay in your marriage or not.
Right.
I'm not in your life and I haven't walked in your shoes. I can't tell you what you're supposed to do with your finances. How in the world would I know? But I can tell you how I got a relationship with God, and God can tell you what to do. And there's no pressure as a sponsor, because I don't have to give you advice on your world's problems, right? I have to remind you, because I need someone to remind me. Have you prayed about it?
Yeah.
What did you find out in inventory when you sat down with God and dug into it and did your writing?
Right.
That's my job. Right?
Talk about sponsorship there a little bit. So I know that you've sponsored quite a few ladies throughout the years. What does it mean to you? What has it done for you? What have you learned throughout the process? Are you a different sponsor now than when you first started sponsoring people? I know in particular, I was like a stalker.
I was too, yeah, for sure. Because I'm in sales, right? So my thing was closing the deal right away with newcomers. And so when I'd meet a newcomer, I would say, okay, so do you want to just go to coffee right now after the meeting, and we can talk about when we're going to start going through the steps. It wasn't asking. It wasn't wait for them to call or ask if I was sponsoring, right? I was all about closing the deal right at the beginning. but that's not what it's like today at all. I currently sponsor 10 really awesome women. It's so cool. It's rare for me, but to have a group of women that I work with that all have a bond with one another. We get together at least once a month for an accountability meeting and just share what we're doing in our programs.
So an accountability meeting, help me with that. What does that look like?
It's for us, it's 90 minutes of sitting in a circle and bringing food and lots of coffee, and we go around in a circle and say, okay, here's what I did this week and this month, how many meetings I went to, the circle and the triangle. Yeah. What am I doing as a service commitment? Who am I sponsoring others? And what am I doing actively in my steps right now? And we got to all hold each other accountable to stay active in our program. And we get to see when people are full of excuses, what happens? It's just a reminder of what life looks like when we don't do this stuff.
Well, the time has flown. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is important that you want to make sure that we cover before we end our time together here?
I would just say that I've been real involved since I came to AA with always attending our monthly group conscience meeting, which is our monthly business meeting that we have for Alcoholics Anonymous, and with always having a service commitment. I used to take meetings to the jail. Or whether it's chairing meetings. And so I feel like I've always been plugged in to the heart of AA since I got sober. And, I've done tradition studies and take my sponsees through the traditions, but I've also sat down with old timers and spent 6 months going through the concepts and making sure I understand the service structure and that stuff. But something changed drastically a few years ago when my oldest son was really struggling with his alcoholism, where it's a whole different world when I'm now walking into a meeting trying to make sure A's healthy and the doors are open and the chairs are set up, because I want to make sure it's there for my kids and grandkids. Yeah. It's totally different than, because it was selfish before. I'm working with others and I'm being of service, so I'll stay sober, right? And now it's, when you talk about my kids and when you mess with people's kids, it's a whole different ballgame. And so this new passion that I have to make sure AA is okay. I was super worried about the meeting at the trailer last night and nobody being there because everyone was getting together to be together for George's death, and what if there's a newcomer that shows up and there's no one at the trailer? And I'm constantly worried about that trailer. Is someone chairing the meeting? Is somebody going to be there to greet? And how do I make sure A is alive and well in every place I go? Because I have a responsibility in my gut to make sure in a different way that it's healthy and there for my sons and grandkids, my family,
I get that. And by the way, when Dawn references the trailer, for those of you who are not familiar with the trailer, we have it's where they always put alcoholics, right, in the trailers and the basements. We have a trailer that we meet at outside of a church, and the trailer has a creaky wood walking up to the trailer. It's got some pretty ugly green carpet.
It's not just ugly, it's disgusting. Yeah, it's gross. But I love it.
Yeah, the ceilings are bowing in, and the walls are chipped. All that paint is chipped off the wall. But
we all love our gross
trailer.
We
love it, though, right? It's where we find the God of our understanding. Yeah, home is where the heart is. That's a very good way of putting that. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to end it here with a couple of some comments that we received from you guys. Many of you wrote in to feedback at soberspeak.com, and I just want to read this here. Number one is from Sean. He says, love the speakers and the format. Please keep it up. Oh no, and I'm not queued up here, but hold on just a second here, Don. I can make it there quick. And I got a couple more comments, and I just want to make sure that we read these here real quick because we really appreciate it I want to make this more of a dialogue as time goes on. Here's some other feedback. I said, John, as I travel quite a bit for a living, I can't always do a meeting on the road. This is most appreciated with a big capital M. Excellent. Loved Clay D, a fine example of AA. That's from Mark. And another comment that we had come in here is said, and this is from Doug, it says, good evening. I listened to the podcast with Renee E. The sound quality is excellent. Your interaction with the guests is perfect. You can tell that you have a sincere interest in your guests' stories. Thank you for letting me know about the podcast. I'm sincere when stating that I truly enjoyed listening. Thank you, Doug. So,
and I just wanted to ask, if you don't mind me interrupting, I've been listening to all the podcasts. I didn't know there was an area to leave
comments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you do that?
You can go to www. And this is not, she's not setting me up. This was real. I did not tell her to ask this. www.soberspeak.com. And either you click on the contact us button, or you could just email directly to feedback@soberspeak.com. And, I'm interested in suggestions, comments, ideas, right? This is evolving. I have no idea what I'm doing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just completely winging it. You ask Dawn, we're sitting here. I have kind of a makeshift studio. She thought it was a sewing table when we first came in, right? I set up a little microphone here on the desk, and I just bring in people that I know, and we just sit down and we have a little conversation. It's not real complicated. But I thank you for your support in whatever form it comes, whether it's sharing the podcast with your friends or just listening in any form that you choose. So I would say keep coming back. It works if you work it. And I'm going to read here. In fact, I'm going to ask Dawn to read it. And she doesn't know this is coming up. This is the first time I've done this. Start right there where it says abandon yourself to God as you understand God at the end, and then we'll close it up.
Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you till then.
Like I said, keep coming back. It works if you work it.